Pode? Boa tarde, excelentíssimos senhores prefeitos, autoridades, senhores e senhoras. Em nome do Centro de Operações Rio e do prefeito do Rio de Janeiro, eu agradeço a honra de estar neste momento, nesse encontro tão importante para a sociedade mundial. Eu vou mostrar para vocês uma experiência, um pouco da experiência do Rio no Centro de Operações, em desafios de mudanças climáticas e como a cidade vem se preparando para essas mudanças. O município do Rio tem uma população aproximada de 6,5 milhões de habitantes, com uma topografia desfavorável a mudanças climáticas. Nós temos rios, mares e montanhas. E existem hoje diversas áreas de riscos de deslizamento e de inundação. Em abril de 2010, tivemos fortes chuvas que afetaram a cidade. Na época, os radares existentes não pegaram essas chuvas fortes. E isso tem acontecido por causa muito também dessas mudanças que têm acontecido no clima. As coordenações de emergência na época o radar na época não pegaram essas chuvas, né? O prefeito, então, Eduardo Paes, na época, tomou uma decisão muito importante para a cidade. Ele, em 4 meses, construiu um centro de operações. Esse centro de operações com o maior telão da América Latina, 400 funcionários trabalhando 24 horas por 7, 600 câmeras online e mais de 30 órgãos integrando esse centro de operações. A gente ainda adquiriu um radar meteorológico e um sistema de previsão de alta resolução meteorológica. Bom, tudo isso focado principalmente na integração das informações e na prevenção, tornando-se assim o Centro de Operações referência nacional e internacional para este tipo de evento. Isto tudo tem dado ao Rio de Janeiro as condições inigualáveis para o atendimento de emergência do dia a dia, aos grandes eventos e aos desafios das mudanças climáticas. Eu vou mostrar isso tudo num vídeo agora que eu vou apresentar para vocês. Obrigado, grato.
Pulsation, people, rhythm, work, beauty, energy, day and night, 24 hours. This city never stops and must not. And that's why the Rio de Janeiro city government created the Rio Operations Center in the neighborhood of Cidade Novo. The Operations Center is a modern decision-making center that operates 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. Entirely equipped with high technology. The heart of the project is found in the control room. It is here that the 70 operators alternate during different shifts to monitor the city's operation. Over 400 cameras installed at strategic points supply images that are viewed on this big screen, the largest in Latin America. The Operations Center assists Rio de Janeiro with its daily routine, with the planning of major events and during emergency situations, such as strong rains, traffic accidents, blackouts, and mudslides. With all of the agencies involved in the city's operation working in an integrated fashion at the Operations Center, local residents now know that Rio de Janeiro is becoming a better city, an intelligent city.
O Centro de Operações permite que tenha gente olhando para todos os cantos da cidade 24 horas por dia, 7 dias da semana, que era o que não acontecia. Então isso aqui para mim é um sonho realizado. Desde o dia que eu entrei na prefeitura eu sonhava em ter esse espaço para a cidade do Rio de Janeiro, para as pessoas, principalmente isso, as pessoas saberem que elas estão sendo cuidadas.
Prevention and information. The city government invested in the latest technology to forecast the weather and was a pioneer in acquiring a radar for the exclusive purpose of preventing flooding and mudslides. Installed in the neighborhood of Mohu do Somaré, this radar can forecast rains that may hit the city. The images are monitored by a team of meteorologists from the entity Alerta Heo. This information is supplied to the High Resolution Weather Forecast, PMAR, a system developed by IBM exclusively to meet the city's characteristics. With this technology, it is possible to forecast storms up to 48 hours in advance. Rio de Janeiro is the only city in Latin America with an exclusive weather system like PMAR. The city government installed sirens along the slopes with a risk for mudslides. If the radar detects strong rains in these regions, the alert system is triggered at the operations center, instructing residents to leave these sites and take shelter at the support points.
Nesta área, moradores dirijam-se para locais seguros ou.
The registered residents also receive the alert via torpedo on their cellular phones. At the Rio Operations Center press room, journalists have access to information in real time about events that may affect the city's routine. And right from here, this information can reach citizens directly.
Nas ruas da prefeitura aconteceu acidente na Avenida Brasil, pista central, sentido centro, nas mediações de Parada de Lucas.
In this way, the citizen will be constantly informed and will have a fast response to any change in Rio de Janeiro's routine. When some anormality is detected in the city, it is here, in the crisis room, that the mayor, secretaries, and other agents meet to make decisions. The mayor's residence and civil defense have a direct connection to this room. The heavy investment in the team and technology make the Rio Operations Center a global reference in the city's planning and operations. All of this because Rio de Janeiro cannot stop. Rio de Janeiro's city government, always present.
Bom, o Centro de Operações está aberto para todos que queiram visitar. Fica na Cidade Nova. E lá vocês poderão conhecer com mais detalhes qualquer informação. Eu agradeço a todos. Obrigado.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cristina Mendonça, C40 City Director, Rio de Janeiro, and her distinguished panel.
I would like to welcome Dr. Diego Bravo from Bogotá and Lord Mayor Eckhard Wüstner. You are very welcome. Good afternoon to you all. Before I start, I would like to give an introduction for Lord Mayor Dr. Eckhard Wüstner. He is the chairman of the City Council and director of the city administration. He was directly elected in October 2006 for a term of 8 years. And prior to his election as Lord Mayor, he held a number of senior positions responsible for the environment, most recently as Deputy Mayor for Environment and Energy of the City of Heidelberg. He serves as a head of the European Energy and Climate Task Force and President of the Executive Board of the Energy Cities Network. And here on my left, we have Dr. Diego Bravo, who is representing Mayor Petro, who unfortunately did not manage to make it here due to health problems. And I take this opportunity, Dr. Diego, to wish him a very fast recovery. Okay. Well, it is really an honor and a pleasure to moderate this session about climate adaptation and risk assessment. In the previous sessions in the morning, we have talked a lot about mitigation, GHG reduction. We set up commitments to reduce GHG emissions, but mitigation is not enough. And this is what we are going to hear from the city of Heidelberg and the city of Bogota, that climate adaptation and risk assessment are also extremely important. And to me, and I believe to all of you, this conversation will be very interesting because we have Heidelberg and Bogota represents diverse conditions. We have a city from a developing country with a population of around 150,000 people, in the city of Bogota from a developing country with a population of around 8 million, which rises high above sea level, 2,000 meters above sea level. So very, very diverse conditions. So I think this conversation will be very, very interesting. And one of the things, one of the questions people normally ask me is, Christina, how this collaboration between cities that C40 promotes, this network of collaboration, be so effective if cities are so different? So I'm hoping that this conversation will be a concrete example that this is not only possible, but is also extremely powerful. So having said that, I would start the first question to Lord Mayor, to understand a little bit how vulnerable Heidelberg is and what are the main risks regarding to climate change.
I come immediately to this question, but I just wanted to point out about 20 years ago when we were already starting our CO2 reduction campaign, and we had a big campaign in our city, Rio is talking, Heidelberg is acting, 20 years ago. We didn't want to talk about adaptation at that time because we thought it's much more important to have clear strategy plans, and that's what we have implemented over the last 20 years. And I'm also here as a representative of more than 4,000 cities with 160 million people in Europe have signed a clear and strict commitment, minus 20% till the year 2020, by implementing a clear strategic planning in the field of climate protection. But coming back to the point of adaptation, we noticed that the time is running so fast and we couldn't achieve our goals as we expected at that time. So we have also strictly working now on adaptation programs beside our other programs in changing the awareness, especially starting from the young generation then to the old generation. For a city like Heidelberg, it is a very interesting thing, and I think it's the same situation in Bogota and any other city. We spent millions over the last years already in preventing activities, not only on operation centers. We spent millions for water storage tanks, decentralized in the city for heavy rain periods to store the water over 3, 4, 5, 6 hours and then let the water secure into the sewage system that not the whole downtown area collapse and will be flooded. So this means that, and it is very interesting, that we achieve 100% commitment that we have to do something like this. We get millions also passing through the city council. There is no big, heavy political debate about this. And by having implemented such a strategy now, we have achieved that decentralized the water is storage. And for this heavy rainwater, we are at the moment able to fix a high-level flood, but heavy investment in the past. In the downtown area, it is also the case that we have the main river going through our city, and it's a very narrow city where the river passes through the city, which is flooded through the river. the next point. But there we have an electronic controlling system over the river length, so that we are able to know about 3-4 hours before when the flood is coming through the river, so that we can use our mobile protection wall system to be implemented. There are fixed points along the river, so that we are able, if the river gets a height of 1.5 to 2 meters higher than normal level, that not the downtown area with the main roads, that's a big problem also for the economic situation, won't be flooded then for 1 day or longer. So what is the message? The message is we're having to working very concentrate on this program, but I sometimes couldn't believe how many millions we spent for these adaptation programs. And when you think about that, on the same side, you're trying to implement an investing program for retrofitting. Every million euro is heavily discussed also politically in our city. Also, if we have a great awareness, twice awarded as a European capital city for sustainability movement, and have achieved quite a lot of results, for example, in the field of traffic. When we start our activities, we had about half of the population is using cars. Today, only 1/3 of the population are using cars for communicating in the city. The rest is going by as a pedestrian, using the bike, or mass transport system, which is heavily supported by the city, heavily. I think we spend about 100 million euro per year, just a subsidy that everybody can communicate, not only those who are able to pay for it, the system, just as an example.
Okay, great. And what about Bogotá, Dr. Diego?
Bueno, muchas gracias. Es muy grato para mí reemplazar hoy a nuestro alcalde Gustavo Petro, que infortunadamente por un problema de salud tuvo que ser intervenido el viernes de la semana pasada y no pudo asistir. Pero sé bien que les puedo transmitir a ustedes el inmenso interés que tenía en hacerlo, en mostrarle al mundo, en venir a Río, hablar de su proyecto político y de su proyecto de ciudad. Un proyecto que aún hoy, 6 meses después de haber tomado posesión de su cargo, sigue causando mucha controversia interna. Y eso es explicable porque fue un proyecto, fue una propuesta muy controversial y muy diferente a las que regularmente se han hecho para administrar una ciudad como esta de Bogotá. Parece sí ser, sin discusión, si se sale uno del marco, del contexto que hay allí, que es muy sensible por lo que significa desde el punto de vista político el alcalde, parecería, no me cabe la menor duda, de una sensatez inobjetable. Por primera vez en Bogotá se presenta una propuesta que gira justamente alrededor de este tema. El eje de la propuesta del alcalde Petro como candidato y el eje de su plan de desarrollo ahora como alcalde es el de la adaptación, el de la mitigación de la variabilidad climática desde muy diversos puntos de vista, y el eje del programa es el agua. Digamos que la ciudad de Bogotá, como bien lo señalaba usted, se formó de una manera bastante curiosa a 2.600 metros de altitud, una concentración de cerca de 8 millones de personas en la ciudad y más o menos unas 600, 700 mil personas en los alrededores de un territorio que es bastante limitado, lo que se llama la sabana de Bogotá, que es una meseta rodeada de montañas y que pues es el resultado seguramente de que desde que se produjo la colonia se hubiera buscado las zonas altas un poco huyéndole a la malaria, buscando un clima sano. El resultado de eso es que hoy tenemos una red de ciudades en Colombia en las alturas andinas, tropicales, y por esa misma circunstancia enfrentamos muchas limitaciones que necesitan ser interpretadas por los dirigentes de manera que permitan una vida sostenible en esos territorios. La ciudad de Bogotá tiene una distancia de cerca de 1.000 kilómetros a las costas, hay que franquear 3 cordilleras para llegar a ellas, en un país en el que más del 70% de las exportaciones se produce por la vía marítima. Digamos que las condiciones de competitividad de ese territorio en los términos tradicionales no es muy adecuada, no tiene muchas posibilidades. Hace cerca de 30 años ya esta cuenca, el territorio mismo, perdió la capacidad de soportarla. El agua que surtió a sus habitantes durante tantos años desde la conquista misma ya no fue suficiente. Entonces tenemos que solo el 30% del agua de la cuenca misma del río Bogotá, un pequeño río de muy bajo caudal, que se le impuso la tarea ni más ni menos que de soportar la provisión de agua de una ciudad que creció de manera desmesurada y de recibir los residuos de esa misma ciudad, pues con el tiempo hubo de buscarse una alternativa que por fortuna sigue siendo una alternativa de recibir agua por gravedad, pero dentro de unas condiciones de riesgo bastante altas. Digamos, las condiciones geológicas en el caso de Bogotá debieran desaconsejar la impulsión de mayor desarrollo y mayor crecimiento en ese territorio. 2/3 partes del agua que se toma hoy en Bogotá viene de otra cuenca, de la cuenca del Orinoco, cosa que además ha dado lugar a protestas de la Comisión Binacional Colombo-Venezolana, porque pues se produce un desbalance en la cuenca del Orinoco. Pero además importa agua, se ensucia esa agua y se lleva a la cuenca del Magdalena y se dispone finalmente en el Gran Caribe, lo que también da lugar a una protesta de los países del Acuerdo del Gran Caribe por la calidad de las aguas que le lleva Colombia al mar. Entonces, la propuesta del alcalde en ese marco es una propuesta que rompe completamente con el esquema tradicional de desarrollo. Digamos que si volviéramos a la mitología de nuestros aborígenes que cuentan de un señor llamado Bochica que con una vara mágica hizo de esa laguna que era entonces esa sabana de Bogotá una tierra, digamos, unos valles con agua, pero bastante desaguada, digamos, por un salto, con la ruptura de las rocas, produjo un gran desagüe para que se desinundara ese territorio. Habría que decir que lo que hoy se necesita es esa misma vara mágica, pero para desaguar de gente ese territorio. Eso no se recibe muy fácilmente. El alcalde propone construir una ciudad de manera densa, dejar de desparramarse en ese territorio en consideración por sus limitaciones, dejar de ocupar los espacios del agua, los humedales, producir asentamientos humanos sostenibles, alejarlos de las zonas de riesgo, de inundación, de deslizamiento, condensar la ciudad, básicamente eso. Y eso se combina con una serie de propuestas en materia de movilidad, de soluciones de transporte, de soluciones en general de provisión de recursos que son en el resumen central, la manera más clara y concreta de enfrentar la realidad de cambio climático que estamos enfrentando, que estamos teniendo en este territorio. Es difícil porque para ustedes no será extraño, pues que obviamente las presiones de constructores, de propietarios de suelos, de propietarios de sistemas de transporte privado que fueron, marginando las soluciones públicas, y hoy las soluciones públicas se enfrentan a una poderosa red de intereses para salir adelante, pues no es fácil. Quienes son dueños de esas tierras quieren que en ellas se siga edificando. Quienes tienen la tarea de construir, y no lo quiero decir de manera peyorativa, nosotros no estamos proponiendo en la ciudad de ninguna manera una guerra contra ellos, pero sí es una propuesta de asimilar la realidad del territorio, entenderla y ajustarse a ella, y esos intereses se ven afrentados por la circunstancia de que se comienzan a adoptar políticas que limitan lo que estaban haciendo sin ninguna limitación en los últimos años. Entonces proponemos una ciudad compacta en ese territorio, con un sistema de transporte principalmente público, con básicamente movilizado por gas o energía, o sistemas híbridos que enfrenten los impactos de las emisiones más fuertes del transporte tradicional, y es sin duda una propuesta muy revolucionaria para una ciudad que no estaba acostumbrada a ello. Quiero pues hacer ese resumen un poco desordenado, discúlpenme, quien tenía preparada su intervención además en su cabeza, porque no suele preparar papeles, lo tiene muy claro, era el alcalde, pero espero haberlo interpretado correctamente en esto que he resumido ante ustedes.
Okay, very challenging situation, this, and interesting, the commonality with regards to water about both cities. And could you help explain how which steps did you take to identify those risks, and what are the stage of implementation of those plans, of those actions? I understand Heidelberg is has already is a little bit ahead, let's say like this.
I think you have a lot of possibilities to have a strategy plan for a flood, which takes place every 10, every 20, every 100 years. You have your computer models, which you have implemented, and you also know which adaptations are necessary if you stick on the question of water. The main point is, where do you get all this investment from? Because we all know, if you have decentralized water storages, if you have these flood shots, mobile or really implemented, it's all possible. But for a city like my city, I think we can just manage it. For just my city. But for the next city, which is in the Rhine Valley, or for many areas in the Netherlands, you have to close the seaside, the seashore of hundreds of kilometers, because the whole country nearly is under the sea level. So there is such a tremendous investment needed, which they also try to implement, like Venice. Venice is flooded all year over, but now much oftener, much more per year, and they have now a strategy to close the lagoon by a mobile barrier, because if it's a static barrier, the whole biodiversity will change, and then you have a swamp, then you have more insects, then you have no exchange of water, which is then a totally different situation. So an incredible investment, and this is just taken by those who are directly affected massively. So these are the cities. And the question is now, where is the money coming from to keep also, or to secure those cities in Europe also, if the flood is coming? And the flood is coming is just a question how often per year and how you can set up such a system. So the investment of these projects, not just by the World Bank, it's also a European topic. It's very important, and you get, what's always the case at the moment, very cheap credits. So 1.52%. It's the same level of the World Bank. But the problem is you have not so many free capital in your city to spend for such a huge investment of just one water barrier of 200 million for a smaller city, just on one side.
So in terms of financial resources to implement adaptation measures compared to mitigation, the financial resource for adaptation is much more limited. Is that this is the...
And you need there, which is always very important, first of all, a local-based strategy of a strategy plan, investment, and then it must be a clear commitment with the national side, with the European side, and with the international side, because everybody has taken over some parts of the invest and of the activity for greater investments. It's absolutely necessary for the smaller for decentralized water storages. We have already in Europe, I would say, a quite good system to secure what my colleague from Bogota said, that our clean rivers, we have still clean rivers, or we have now clean rivers, are not polluted so often, because if you can't get all the flood water through the sewage plant, then the whole biodiversity in the normal river will be collapsing.
So it's interesting to see how a physical aspect can also affect health conditions, economic conditions, so everything is completely interrelated. And do you have any suggestions on how those investments on climate adaptation can be offset by somehow, or any ideas, mechanisms that could be in place?
Yeah, we have not a clear strategy. Where is the money at the moment really coming from globally, I think? We have our adaptation programs through the convention, but these adaptation programs is just a single spot at the moment for those who are directly affected globally and have really get the first support, I would say. But there are lots of cities affected. New York City, Amsterdam, Venice, and so on and so on. Every big city has a close link to the seaside, is based on a river, and they all get problems. This, of course, is the reality. And now spending so much money just for the adaptation is really bringing up a little bit angry, because this is also money which should be used much more effective in the long term, in education programs in schools, in more investment in renewables or retrofitting programs. But the problem is that the time is running off.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Diego, how is the situation in Bogota in terms of the stage of the implementation of this plan, and where financial resources are coming or are not coming, and what are the challenges?
Sí, tenemos recientemente aprobado el plan de desarrollo. Es un plan que tiene unas necesidades de financiación grandes, principalmente de endeudamiento. La ciudad tiene una gran capacidad de endeudarse, tiene un patrimonio, sus empresas públicas suman entre ellas un gran patrimonio, tienen bajo endeudamiento y por lo tanto es perfectamente posible. Además se tiene buena calificación en los casos de las tres grandes empresas, por lo menos de telecomunicaciones, energía y agua, que serían las principales fuentes, y en los aspectos en los que está desfinanciado el plan, está la posibilidad cierta de acceder a recursos de crédito. Así que está previsto, principalmente en el tema de la movilidad, en el tema de transporte. Allí es donde se debe producir la mayor inversión. Hay inversiones importantes en otros temas. En el tema de alcantarillado sanitario, desde luego, hay que hacer una inversión grande para darle la estructura requerida a la propuesta de redensificación. En la medida en que pretendamos que la ciudad crezca hacia arriba, que deje de ocupar terrenos de importante valor agrológico y de importante valor ambiental, pues tenemos que disponer la infraestructura principalmente en el tema del alcantarillado sanitario. Está muy retrasado. Tenemos un alcantarillado sanitario con un promedio de vida entre 30 y 50 años, de cerca del 70% de ese alcantarillado. Son inversiones cuantiosas las que hay que hacer, pero bueno, digamos que la ciudad tiene un régimen impositivo dinámico, principalmente el impuesto predial y el impuesto a la actividad industrial y comercial. En el plan quedaron aprobados un nuevo modelo en este régimen impositivo, y estamos seguros de que en la medida en que avancemos en la consecución de los recursos de crédito y de que se pongan en ejecución los nuevos modelos impositivos, se tendrán los recursos suficientes para echar a andar todas estas políticas, básicamente de adaptación al cambio climático en la ciudad de Bogotá.
You also mentioned before how challenging it is in terms of the barriers, the different stakeholders, the diverse opinions. So how do you engage those various different stakeholders towards this same direction? This plan to mobilize the various different stakeholders that maybe they do not consider this as a main priority, or they do not understand, because climate adaptation is something that we will actually feel if we don't act in the long term. So at present, what do you do to mobilize for action now?
Maybe I just give an example. For example, the city and the city-owned utility are really in the water field one of the main and leading actors. What we are doing, for example, is you have to pay now, which was not in the past the reality. You have to pay now through the water price, a price if you don't drain the rainwater on your own ground. So you have to pay a higher price. So if you have an area which is totally full of asphalt and no rainwater can go in through the earth, there is a higher price. So through the square meter higher price, we noticed that, for example, companies who have huge parking lots, in the past they haven't paid a high price for the sewage system, but now they have to pay a very high price, because we have to take all the water. We have to secure that this water, which can be drained in his area, have to be sent to the sewage system, so that we have a higher invest. And by changing this system, there was a tremendous benefit in the field that many companies open the ground, having now rainwater drainage systems implemented, so that not so much water is coming into the sewage system, so that the whole system is not collapsing so early. Just one of this point. But I wanted also to mention 2 points which is very interesting for us. I think adaptation means not only water. It also means that, for example, in the past, of course, we pay for poor people that they were connected to the electric grid and could get electricity free. But what we noticed is after the oil peak, and the price is always going up, also middle class people, families couldn't pay anymore the energy bill. And that's a new topic now, which we have to deal with. So, for example, our energy utility, which is owned by the city, decided that we spend about 1 million euro at the start in a fund so that we take over the bill for those who couldn't pay the bill without telling the story. I'm now here in Brazil and not in Heidelberg, not in the TV and in the media, because otherwise too many people will try to get into this fund. But it is a structure where we noticed that people couldn't use electricity anymore because it's getting more and more expensive. And this will be in the past, in the future, a main topic that only rich people are able to use energy in the future when you concentrate it and focus it a little bit more in this direction. And also the biodiversity changes. That's the reason why in our city we're planting now dry plants, because the rain is not coming so often in summer periods, so that we need new plants. And we also noticed that the biodiversity changes, new species are coming over the Alp regions, which was not possible in the past because the winter is not so strong anymore. And now we have animals which we hadn't before in Heidelberg, and they are using specific bioclusters and just going in, and the natural population of Heidelberg is then in some kinds like bees losing the fight against these new species.
So things are happening. You are seeing the effects of climate change at this moment there. Have you managed to quantify this impact? Is this in terms of put some money in what is this change in biodiversity already impacting? The city of Heidelberg has an assessment done in this regards?
Yes, of course. It's just a few examples what we're talking about. So what you need is really a strategy plan. And this strategy plan means that we have more than 100 activities, but now more and more activities are coming up just dealing with adaptation. At the beginning, there were just 2-3 projects in the field of adaptation, but it comes more and more now because we notice that we have to react much faster than we're willing to do.
Okay, I was wondering the question about to assess the economic impact of those adaptation threat of those climate change threats, in order to justify and to be able to get get a little bit more easily the financial resources. So I was wondering if this is a mechanism that is being used to show the impact to get more.
Yeah, but at the moment it's just infecting the political structure, like the city councils. They accept it, of course, but it's a question of where the money is now coming from, because the city council couldn't pay for everything of these parts. And adaptation means it's mostly not very economic. You have a very low economic benefit because it's just securing systems. On the other hand, renewables is a huge and tremendous economic market also, like retrofitting. We spent €1 in an incentive program, and 10 euros will be invested. So for the craft and trade mans, for companies who are implementing solar technology, is a huge market now. So it's like a investment program for economic growth. There you have lots of benefits, but in the adaptation programs, it's mostly not really very much affecting the economic situation. It's just securing that the city can work, that business can work, but there is no direct positive impact to the economic situation.
I understand. And Dr. Diego, going back to the experience in Bogota, when we were also mentioning the same question that I posed to Lord Mayor regarding the mobilization of the different stakeholders toward this, the importance of considering climate adaptation as a priority for the city. So how are you mobilizing the different stakeholders?
Bueno, yo creo que ha sido más receptivo en general el público de lo que podría esperarse. Hay un poco de resistencias, desde luego, por las razones que ya hemos señalado, la contrariedad que produce un cambio que parece ser muy radical. Pero finalmente hay opciones importantes para los diferentes actores, especialmente para quienes se mueven en el mundo de los negocios. Es probablemente atractivo, tendrán que aceptar que algunos negocios que tenían en mente no son posibles, no se van a impulsar. Estamos teniendo una controversia bastante intensa, por ejemplo, en relación con proyectos por fuera de los perímetros urbanos de este territorio que se surtían de agua que produce el acueducto de la ciudad, y el acueducto anunció que no va a suministrar agua para el desarrollo de esos proyectos como un instrumento de ordenación del territorio. El agua, la ciudad se ordena alrededor del agua y de ninguna manera el agua puede ser usada como elemento desordenador del territorio. Eso enfrenta voces de discordia que sienten que el desarrollo se está parando y que se está enfrentando a unos procesos que juzgan injustos, pero que probablemente con el tiempo van a ser aceptados más temprano que tarde. Nosotros vivimos unos impactos muy intensos en estos 2 años por efecto de la ola invernal. El país se rasgó las vestiduras con mucha intensidad por las consecuencias. Se juzgó con severidad la falta de previsión, la falta de prevención, la ausencia de políticas, la ausencia de acciones. Buena parte de lo que se identificó como causa del desastre que produjo esa ola invernal, que en algunos casos no era superior a lo que había sido en el pasado. Lo que pasa es que la circunstancia de unos inadecuados desarrollos hicieron que sus consecuencias fueran más importantes, porque si bien hubo una hidrología bastante superior a la que estaban acostumbrados los ciudadanos a ver, los datos de clima históricos no mostraban siempre que esta hidrología hubiera sido la más alta, pero el impacto sí fue muy fuerte. Bueno, buena parte de eso fue la ausencia de orden, y el país reflexionó sobre eso y ha estado reflexionando sobre eso. La deforestación, la minería a cielo abierto, la minería ilegal, la desecación de los humedales, la ocupación, el relleno para desarrollos de asentamientos humanos, la ocupación de zonas de riesgo también para el desarrollo de asentamientos humanos. Digamos que más o menos la gente entiende que allí está la explicación de que haya sido más dramático el efecto de lo que hubiera sido en el pasado, y este tipo de políticas finalmente recogen el sentimiento de que hay que ponerse en orden, y eso pues tiene unas consecuencias que hay que asumir, pero que seguramente los ciudadanos lo recibirán con gusto.
Okay, thank you very much. As we are approaching the end of the roundtable session, I would like to put a question of reflection visioning how local leaders like yourselves can bring climate adaptation and risk mitigation to the national and to the international agenda, and how organizations like C40, that you are active members, how can we support you in this direction?
I would say experience exchange, that's very important. Bringing political pressure, I think that's the main message also of the C40 here in Rio, to the national side, to the international political systems, that the cities only couldn't solve these problems. And also, if we have our strategic planning, we need the close link to the national side, the international side. And this is the big message and the big benefit also for the C40.
Thank you. If you could also give a very brief remark, Dr. Diego, I would appreciate. We would appreciate.
Muchas gracias. Sí, yo siento lo mismo en la medida en la que los ciudadanos entiendan que este es un tema que está siendo objeto de el interés del mundo entero, que las comunidades, los países y los movimientos especiales como esta iniciativa del C40 tan importante, tan interesante y tan oportuna, están encima de problemas que probablemente pudieran pensar que son solo de ellos, lo son de muchos. La ayuda es, en nuestro caso, sin duda, muy oportuna y eficaz.
Well, I thank you very much, really. And this conversation was a very concrete example that climate change will affect, regardless of the health, the gender, the physical location. It really is an opportunity to remind us that we are all one. No, there is no distinction. And we are looking forward to continue working together with you to minimize this impact and to overcome this barrier. Thank you. Thank you to everybody.